Okay, everyone, it is now top of the hour. I know we still have a lot of people joining us, but we are going to go ahead and get started today. We are happy to provide this training. We are excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and kind of go through the overview and how things are going to work, and bear with me as I'm getting used to what screen I'm working with. So we're first going to go through introductions and the kind of the housekeeping of this meeting. You will not be able to unmute yourself. So any questions you can put into the Q&A of the Zoom. It's the little box, so not the chat function, but it's actually the Q&A box. As well as we do have a QR code that we use for our in-person trainings that is still available, but anytime you see that, that's when we will be stopping and going over the questions. If we do not immediately answer your question, it means one of two things. We are going to get to that later in the presentation, and we'll be covering that question when we get to that part of the presentation and training today, or it means that we're going to be reaching out to you to provide some further technical assistance in order to get your question answered. Okay. But this training is going to go over a refresher, as well as introduce some changes that we are making and that we want to make you aware of before they go into effect. So to get started, for those that do not know me, my name is Daphne. I am the director of the Office of Background Processing. You will be hearing from myself and many from the team today as well. The Office of Background Processing has 3 sections, as not only do we complete human services background checks, but we do licensed childcare providers, health facilities, and DHHS employees, as well as we do offer some public fingerprint services. So we have the 3 teams, as you can see. We have Jeff's team is over human services treatment, DSPD, youth transport applications. We've got Carrie's team who is over the child care, as well as child placing adoptions and fosters, our congregate care and youth programs. And we also have Cammie's team who is over our health facilities programs, our DHHS employees, our fingerprint services, and our human services contracted providers. And we couldn't do all of the work that we do without the great support of our system management team. And so you may be hearing from Chris and Angela, but primarily Jake, who is over the direct access clearance system for human services providers. So again, this is the QR code if you need to capture that, or again, make sure to be using the question and answer feature in the Zoom call for questions. We'll go ahead and get started with that. So just a little bit of background about background checks and the DACS system. So DACS, again, the direct access clearance system, it's an automated fingerprint-based system for background checks. It allows online tracking of applicants. It sends notifications when we make determinations or different when the applicant is in different parts of the process. And it really allows for the background check, the determination to be shared amongst different providers. And it helps us with all of that. It also helps us with a little bit of automation that we have some features available on our end as well. Okay, so just a little refresher of some of the basics for applicants. They must be entered into the system within 2 weeks of association with your program. Within that, they must provide consent within 5 days of the application being entered. This is where we get to one of those automated parts that, yes, this will close at the time when they are, if they do not complete the disclosure within 5 days. And if they are not fingerprinted within 2 weeks from the time of submitting the application, that is when it will also close. So these are just some key time frames to remember there. And again, these, if they are not closed within 5 days, the system automatically will close if there's no consent. And within 14 days, if they are not fingerprinted, the system will close. We have some ways that we can extend these timeframes if you reach out to us. So who needs to be entered? Essentially, who needs a background check? So it's really anyone who has that direct access with your program. They can be a caretaker, or others that we'll get to, but really, if they have that opportunity for personal communication or physical touch, as well as view medical, financial, or other confidential identifying information, they need to be entered, and we need to complete a background check on them. So like I was saying, these caretakers, any one of those with direct access that has this, and I'm going to also say without constant unsupervised direct access. This includes youth who are 12 to 17 who are either employed or volunteer, or again, reside in a home, but who do not receive DHHS services. Okay, so now who doesn't? Who does this list exclude? Really, this list is going to exclude anyone who is direct supervised at all times. The best scenario for this is that if, you know, it's summertime, your air conditioner breaks, you're going to contract with someone to come in and fix that. As long as they are going to be directly supervised, I would say best practice is ensure that they are directly supervised if they will have any access to the population that you are serving, to any of those clients within your program. Then we don't need to do a background check. Again, if they come in and you're unable to supervise, as long as they're not going to have that direct access with those clients, we're not going to worry about doing a background check on them either. We just need to make sure that if they have that unsupervised direct access, that they have a background check done on them. Okay. So I noticed that the question was asked, is this going to be recorded? Yes, this call is recorded, and we will be sending out the training as well, if for those that need to get it in there. Is there a direct line in order to reach someone directly for questions? Our experience has been email only, and frustration being able to fully explain a situation to get a suitable answer to resolve the issue in question. Yes, we do have a phone number that you can reach out to. It's just our main phone number, and that person will then transfer you to the correct team that can best answer your question or try to. We will provide our contact information at the end as well. Within 2 weeks of association, is this 2 weeks before or after, or just 2 weeks before? Within 2 weeks of association. So you say you essentially make the offer of employment. And so within 2 weeks that they are hired with your program, the background process should be started. Okay. Do independently contracted supervisors need background checks? They do not have direct contact with our clients. Contracted supervisors. That is one we're going to have to reach out to, because I would like to know more of the information. But again, even if they don't have direct access with clients, but you case staff with them and they know the details, they know the personal, medical, or financial information, those are always reasons that we need to also perform a background check in order to protect this vulnerable population. Okay, for getting my DACS password reset, I've tried it and it didn't work. We're gonna kind of cover this, but I'm gonna go ahead and answer this as well. From the DACS homepage, you are always available. If you forgot your password, there's a self-service reset password option that you can do to fix that. If that does not work, again, we do have people available that we can help set that for you, and we will provide that contact information at the end. Okay. If a child does random babysitting, they do not need a background check. There are certain situations with different providers that if they are under 5 hours cumulative a week, they may not need that, but that is very specific to those programs and applies primarily to the foster care settings, and that does not generally apply to all programs. Can folks work with population while background check is pending? Yes, our rule allows them to be directly supervised. So as long as they're going to be directly supervised, have audio and visual supervision at all times, they can work while we are going through this process. There are a couple exceptions, and those are some federal requirements state that we are not allowed to do that for those particular programs. You need our agency name for today's attendance. We should be able to have that information in the call, in the Zoom meeting. And so, but if we do need that, we will be reaching out. I'm just reading this before knowing whether to answer it now or save it for later. I think we're going to save these other questions for different parts of our presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and now keep going, and we'll get to some questions further on. So with this, now that we understand kind of who needs a background check, now let's go through our responsibilities of who can help and what some of the pain points we experience are. So with this, really there's 3 parts of submitting an application and getting it so that we can perform the background check. So an application must be submitted in DACS, and we know that that's within those 2 weeks. With that, you're going to need to make sure to enter personal identifiable information, verify that person is who they are, make sure a fee has been paid, and just again, double check that all that information is accurate. We've talked about then the applicant themselves needs to provide consent to our office in order for us to have authority to do those background checks. And then fingerprinting, that individual must be fingerprinted if they are 18 years or older from there. And so at any one of those, we cannot be starting the background check if only one of these steps are completed. We have to wait till all of these are completed, and even further, as I'll get into in just a minute. We can help provide some technical assistance, but we can't get started with an actual background check at this time. Okay. Once a person is fingerprinted, they are enrolled in the FBI RATBAC system. RATBAC stands for the Record of Arrest and Prosecutions. Utah, we are very fortunate and lucky because all applicants are enrolled in a nationwide, this FBI RATBAC. So that means if they are arrested or prosecuted anywhere within the United States or our territories, we are notified of that and get that information. And that is updated every nightly. And again, this is also when we receive information. So fingerprints are transmitted, that is sent to the Utah Bureau of Identification to compile that report and release it to us. We cannot start our process until this report is released to us. And this can take anywhere from 1 to 14 days for us to receive back. And so that is when we can start ours, is once this is been completed and sent back to us. I'm going to say not all 50 states are enrolled in this and have this. So like I said, we are fortunate to be one of the states that has enabled this. And we receive these automatic notifications for this. Okay. Now, once we receive that report, that is when we get to start our process. Just like there are 3 main parts to completing an application and getting it to be fingerprinted, there's really 3 main parts that we have, and we're going to go over these in more detail throughout this presentation today. So we're going to be reviewing all the databases and registries once we receive that report back. We're going to then make an initial determination on this person for their eligibility, and we'll get into that in more detail, provided that to you. And then once after we make that initial determination, there might be a time that we request information from the applicant themselves to help us better understand the circumstances and assessing if there is a risk of harm to the population and the clients served by your programs. And so once then we receive that information back, then we're going to be making this final determination and updating DACS as well. Something that we are going to be introducing today is that with the initial and the final determination, that is when your program, you as DACS users, should be getting the notification from OBP as to when we can do that. Okay, let's go over these questions now. Okay, so I'm gonna get okay, let's start with this first one with a formerly separated employee that are rehired. Can we use an old determination result if they link to a new application? So there's a couple of rules we have to follow in order for this process to work. The first is because all applicants are enrolled in FBI Wrapback, we don't want to be doing these searches, and we federally cannot be if they're not associated. So we've worked out an arrangement to be in compliance with the FBI that states that, okay, if they were hired by a program and then they are leave or are separated, we will maintain in the Wrapback subscription for 180 days, so 6 months. And after 6 months, if they are not either rehired by your program or hired by a different program, we're not going to be able to do this. So if they are not rehired within that 180 days, we cannot take that previous determination and apply it. We have to start the process all over. And the system automatically tracks that and when that is applicable for us to apply. So if they are within that time period, yes, that is when we can apply that previous determination, as long as there has been no updates from the Wrapback that we've received within that time frame. Okay. When new applications for when new applications for facilities for recovery, residents or residential facilities, any substance use facilities applies for an application. New application, they're sent a link that tells them they need to get their background checks done. However, when you click on the link, it only takes them to medical or foster care application. This is problematic and stops all things from going forward. So what I'm seeing is we're going to provide you with some technical assistance because there are no forms that someone can complete in order to get a background check done. This is why we use the direct access clearance system, and we're going to show you how you are providing us with their information to get this process started. We do have some forms available for some specific populations, as they do not have access to DACS directly. We have an on-campus housing component to our program. If a client living in their own apartment within our facility hires a regular babysitter, I think that's trying to say, does the babysitter need a background check? I would say that babysitter is not associated with your program and does not need a background check, because these residents, they'll kind of have independent living and can do things and invite people into their homes outside of that. I've had individuals that have gotten their fingerprints done yet. They haven't been recorded in the DACS setting, so I'm getting emails stating that they haven't done their fingerprints. So I will email in the fingerprint form that was completed, and I'm told that I need to go back to the live scan place in order to have them resend. Why can't you use a documentation that proves they were done? So when we're gonna get into this when we do fingerprinting. But if information is not correct that matches DACS, the fingerprints are not gonna show as completed. So that is why we are refreshing and we are constantly stating that all personal identifying information needs to be entered. All alias names need to be entered and accurate so that we don't have any of these delays and errors within the system. Because if someone presents a different name at the time that they were fingerprinted, that is not in DACS, it's not going to connect. I'm gonna get to that one later. For RATBAC, does it continually monitor for new offenses and notify us if an individual's eligibility changes due to the new charge or offense? It does continually monitor, and anytime it receives a notification and an update, it will update the DACS system. And you may notice that update before we have had a chance to get to it. So if you notice that change in eligibility determination and have a question about it, you can always email us and we can look into that for you. Does FBI RATBAC notify us if the person commits a crime after their hire? Is it only up to the point the background check is requested? So DACS will notify you, but the RATBAC will not notify you. Utah is a closed record state, meaning we cannot share any of the criminal or non-criminal findings that are identified with you. We have to be here to make that determination on what they are and whether or not it is a risk of harm. And so, but the DACS notification will update that. And as a precaution, if a RATBAC notification is received, there will be an updated eligibility determination first. We're going to be going through that question and answering that question next. Thank you for all of your questions. They are just coming in. To get through questions that apply. There's a lot of questions that I'm seeing that we will get to further in this presentation today. So I oversee 2 licensed agencies for DACS. How do I ensure that this meeting is applied to both? So we have access to the records that with the program that you are with, and we can get those updated and ensure that this training applies for both.
Going to jump in real quick. You can always reach out to DHS DACS at utah.gov, include training, DACS training in the email. I know some of you aren't using the emails you use for DACS. Just let us know.
Okay. Why do you have to wait for NCIC to return their findings? Can't you check the state ones while you are waiting? We can do that. However, the best and most efficient process is for us to have all of the information at once so that we don't have to be going back and touching an application multiple times while we're waiting for applications. And so we wait till we have all of the information first so that then we can provide and make that determination at once. Okay, we are an IOP treatment center. In the past, we've been told that only our licensed and administrative staff need to complete a full background check. Um, it sounds like in this training you are saying that all employees need to have a background check, fingerprints and all. This is pretty costly, and am I understanding you correctly? We are doing this training as a wide net to all of our providers. We do have certain adult only programs that the requirement is only for their um, directors and staff, and that not all employees have to be entered into DACS, and we will be applying those exceptions as well because that is outlined in this statute. So specifically, this is again casting that wide net and what is allowed, and if and we do have that additional training out on what adult only substance use and mental health programs those apply to. Does the check in the DACS system also include the Child Abuse Central Registry for individuals? Yes. This is done, and for different states, we also do this for, or sorry, for different applications types. We are doing this for out of state as well, such as congregate care and foster types of applications. Okay, so those are the questions that really apply currently. We will continue to get to some of those other questions as we go throughout the presentation. So now I'm going to turn, I think you guys have heard enough from me right now. I'm going to turn the time now over to Jake.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, my name's Jake, and you probably talked to me over the phone or through DHS DACS at utah.gov. I'm here to talk about a couple of updates that's going to be rolled out in the next couple of weeks. Actually, most of it I have already started with some of the providers that we do have here. Next slide, please. But the updates that will be rolling out to DAX will just be like a couple things. First will be the providers will be simplified. uh, Basically, you will only have like a primary location in DAX, or it will be per license or certification. And what that means is that if you do have multiple locations under or listed in DAX, say you have a day treatment here in Murray, you have a day treatment in South Salt Lake, and so on. Instead of having multiple locations in DAX, we're only going to be using one per license or certification. And so we will be combining all those day treatments into one entry in DAX instead of having multiple ones. And also that will combine all the employees to just show on that specific location or license or certification. But yeah, next one would be youth 12 and up. Their personal demographic fields are not going to be required anymore. So essentially, with the update, once you enter the child's date birth index, some of the fields that were previously required, it will not have that asterisk where it will require to enter information in there. Um, Next update would be ID uploads and data entry no longer required unless it is requested by OBP. Currently in DAX, when you start an application process, it will require you to submit or upload a copy of their identification, either a passport or a driver's license. That's not going to be required anymore. However, it is still required that you sit face to face with the person that you're trying to enter in DAX. Make sure that their information is accurate and valid. The other update in DAX will just be the person summary view. Currently, how we have DAX is that we ask you to go in and then look in their person summary to go over what status is their current status. Like, say if they're eligible for employment, current has supervision required. That will be simplified with the new update, and we'll go ahead and talk about that one in a couple slides later during this training, and we'll show you what the update is. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, how the provider upgrade will be is that, like, say what you can see on the screen is that the listed by site Yabba Dabba Do Daycare day treatment, and then they also have a day treatment in Mockingbird Lane, outpatient treatment. So that three um, locations will just be listed under the general entry in DAX, where they all have the same license type or background check type, so they will fall into that general location, and that includes all the roster. That way, when a licensor comes in, they can check that general location in DAX, and they will find all the people working for this program. And we've already reached out to licensors. We provided them training regarding DAX, and they should already know that this will be in place in the future. Next slide, please. After this meeting, we will be sending you out a link to the update form. And what it just does is that it will just ask you to enter your licenses or license numbers for every locations that you do have. That way I can go ahead and review and combine which one that needs to be combined. And then when it's done, you will see a more simplified version or access, especially if you have multiple locations in DAX located. Um, okay, next slide. Okay, sorry about my audio. I was just checking this one earlier. Um, entering a new application. So we'll go ahead and show you a new the way that we were supposed to enter locations in DAX. Go ahead and do the next slide. Okay, so DAX is intended to be used in a face-to-face setting with the applicant during the application process. For youth applicants, both the youth and their guardian must be present. Next slide, please. And then we'll go ahead and show you how to search for a new application. Next slide. So to enter a new application, basically you just go into applications, enter the social security number and last name, or the social security number and date of birth. So when the individual is not in DAX, you'll see that green button in there that says add new applicant. In some cases where you enter the social security number and last name and that button doesn't show up, it's possible that they might be using a different last name in the system, and that's the reason why you can't add them. If that ever happens to you, if you don't see that button, reach out to us. Sometimes they might be using a different last name, like their maiden name, that was already in the system, or their social security number was actually different, and we need to go ahead and take a look at that one further. Next slide, please. Okay, let
Okay.
me go over.
So Jake, I'm going to read you some questions.
Okay.
So if we have different licenses per location, we will still have those separate locations, correct?
Right. So basically,
So
you will
no,
have.
they will. I'm gonna start you off
Okay.
because the way. No, they will not be listed as separate locations because of the consolidation. It's gonna be how many programs, Jake?
Well, let me go. The way I want to answer this question is that, so if you have multiple locations and they have the same program or background check type, um, I will go ahead and review that one. If they have multiple day treatments, it will just only be one with a primary address in DAX. Now, say for example, if you have other programs like congregate care or a DSPD program on top of those day treatments, you will have two other entries in DAX for those, since those two have different background check type clearance. But yeah, if it's still confusing, just send me an email with the license numbers that you do have, if you do not receive the form that we'll be sending out, I'll go ahead and review, and it will tell you exactly what you should be seeing in your DAX access. Okay.
Yeah. Next question. Can we no longer have the new hire complete a form for gathering all that is requested for the application?
How do you want to do this one?
So DACS truly is intended, and it always has been, to be face-to-face. We do not require any forms. We do not promote any forms. The best way to use DAX as the system is as the system is intended, and have it be kind of face to face, much like you do with opening a bank account, is the best way. You've got to be face to face for them to gather all of that information, send it in. Everything else we leave up to you as the program. If your programs feels like it is still best, you are just also responsible for maintaining the confidentiality and security of the personal identification that you collect if you use a form. If you just enter it into DAX, DAX is secure. It is up to date with all the criminal justice information security systems that is recommended by the FBI. And there is not that making sure to shred the PII and keep it locked up and confidential and secured. But it's so we put it out there, and we're just trying to give you the best practices of how to use this system, but it is up to you what would work best in your program.
Okay. Do you have any more questions for me?
So it says, I have two programs that are under one license. However, they are completely separate entities. In terms of who they serve within our corporate, excuse me. Excuse me. In terms of who they serve and within our corporate company, will these be consolidated?
Yeah, so it will still be right consolidated. But
So
yeah,
these types are exactly what this form that Jake has created is used for, so that we can review these circumstances and set up your program the best way in DAX. What we want to eliminate is that your program serves the same population, but it might be through different areas throughout in this state, but you have just like one person managing the system, and so then you have to scroll down and have 5 different sites. That gets really time consuming. We're trying to consolidate all of those, and we are willing to again work with your program on some technical assistance and the best way to handle this, but we are just trying to consolidate it easier for both you and for us. Okay, will the new updates also be able to tell if the prospective employee or foster parents are separated from the other programs before I license them with my program?
yeah, so as soon as you do get this new entry in DAX, your drop downs will be limited already. At that point, it will be able to tell, or I mean, as soon as we do set it up, your drop downs will then be able to just identify whether this pe- person is a foster parent or something else. But yeah, it has to come down to that setup. It's really important that you complete that document as soon as you receive it. That way I can go ahead and review and then start that update process. Thank you.
Right. So if we have 8 day treatments across the state from Brigham City to St. George, we would only have one location?
Yeah, so unless we've had some instances where a couple people that works in St. George doesn't want to view access for the Brigham City people. So we can make that arrangement. Just reach out to me. if that's the case. If not, we will still be combining that into one. And like I mentioned earlier, the licensors are made aware of this update, so they shouldn't be surprised that they're only seeing the roster for everybody in one specific location.
Perfect. That led right into their second half of this question. Um,
Okay.
okay. One more question. If I have a foster parent who is also a youth mentor, why do I need to have applications for them?
It's most likely that they do have a different background check type, and so with those different types, even if they, I mean, they need to be checking different registries at that point, so they will need to get different background check submitted in DACS.
Right. Okay. If we used request type employee volunteer, would this also include the abuse registry check? We go ahead and answer that. Yes, this does for in-state in Utah, and we're going to get to answering a little bit more of what we look into later in this presentation as well. So based upon what you enter into DACS and these changes, it's going to be really easy for us to identify and be meeting the state and federal requirements for your program type.
And let me add something onto that one. With the new update, your drop downs will be limited, so you're not actually going to be choosing any more request type. The only thing that will be allowed for you to change would be just the position detail, whether they are an employee or a volunteer. That's all you need to do. Currently in DAX, once you try to submit an application, you're presented with like multiple options to what position category, request type, position detail. Uh, when you try to submit an application, but with the new update, we streamlined that process. You're only going to be choosing one drop down, and that's it. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Okay. So we have been told that we are required to have a form and upload it for foster parents. Is this no longer required? Want me to answer that one, Jake?
I don't know how to answer that.
Okay. Yes. So this has just been a suggestion to help monitor the children or youth that are in the home. But no, it has never been required that a form is for background check purposes when we started using DACS. And because DACS also obtains the consent of the applicant as you enter it in, and they get that email to provide consent.
Licensing and certification may require another process. We're focusing on background checks here. So we're not going to speak to licensing itself or certification at this time. So you may need that form still.
Correct. Something else I need to mention during our question and answer, this presentation and training, we are really focused on the new applicant workflow and getting back to the basics because we have made some of these modifications and some upgrades today. We will not be getting to any verification or renewals today, as we know that there are still some points that we are trying to improve the process on our end to make it better for everyone. And so once we get some of those modifications, we will be doing a training much like we are today as well, and be coming out with those requirements.
Okay. And then we'll go ahead and send this over to Jeff.
All right. Very exciting. Lots of different questions, good changes that are coming up. Just want to let everybody know these will be very beneficial, both for you and for us. So I get the pleasure to go over how to verify an individual that we're submitting a background screen application for. Next slide, please. So before we even begin to enter an applicant into the DACS system, we need to make sure that they have certain identifications, certain cards. First of that is a physical Social Security card. ITINs are not accepted in DACS for the background screening application. It can only be a Social Security card. You have to physically verify the card and then enter the number that's indicated there. The other form of ID that's needed is a valid government issued photo ID. It can't be anything else, and we'll go over that a little bit here in shortly. Next slide, please. So how to verify a person? Again, the DACS system is geared towards having a face-to-face interaction with your new employees or your applicants so that you can verify all the information that's on their identification right there and enter that into the DACS system. So valid forms of identification to ensure that you are properly identifying your employees include a current valid driver's license and a state identification card, a passport, a military ID, employment authorization documents, consulate card, or a permanent resident alien card. If you have any questions in regards to something that's not on this list that may be considered, please reach out to us at CBS Unit to verify that. One item or one verification, it's not even identification, form of identification, a driving privilege card issued by the state of Utah here to enable or allow individuals to drive throughout the state is not a valid form of identification. It says it very clearly at the top of that ID that this is not to be used for identification purposes. So please make sure that as you're looking at and verifying these forms of identification, if you come across a driver's privilege card, that is not a valid form of ID. And again, to reiterate the importance of what you're verifying, all of the information that you're taking from this identification normally it is entered into the DACS system. So it's imperative that it be accurate from that. Okay, go ahead to the next slide, please. Name entry, best practices. Okay, again, verifying this on the identification that you have looked at for your applicant, verifying their full legal name. Okay, we can't go by nicknames or names that they would like to go by. We have to go by what the information is on the identification. The full legal name, that means the first name, the middle name, the last name, exactly as is presented on the identification. That's what needs to be entered into the DACS system. If you see a middle name there on the ID, put it in to the DACS system. We need to have that information. If it's not on the identification, but you are told that they do have a middle name and it's disclosed to you, please enter that in the DACS system as well. We have had some difficulties with the full legal name being entered in. We do need all that information to be able to process that background screening. Okay, next slide, please. All right, aliases and prior names. This is where everything comes into play. We've talked about the full legal name that you've been able to verify off of the valid identification. Aliases or prior names. Prior names, typically a maiden name from somebody that's been married that they previously had will need to be entered there. Any names that they may go by. For instance, the first name of Elizabeth. You can break that down into Liz, Beth, Lizzie, different types of names that come from that one name. And if they disclose that to you or you understand or know them by that name, please make sure you're entering that in as an alias. Nicknames, this is where aliases would come into play. Anything that they're known by. Everybody has a legal first name, but not everybody likes their legal first name, and so they'll go by a nickname or something different. Hyphenated names, please include both names in that. List each part separately. So if I have a name of Smith-Jones, please enter in Smith as an alias and Jones as an alias. That way we're able to review any history that they have that may have been by one name or another. It's very possible that Smith-Jones is not always the name used there. And again, we've already discussed, if you hear the applicant referred by another name that's not on the ID, that's an alias. Please put it down and have that in the DACS system so that we can process the background screening accordingly. Again, reemphasize, very important, get the information accurate into the DACS system because that's what we're using to process their background screenings. Okay, next slide. Personally identifiable information. This is all the information that we require of you to enter into the DACS system. Most of this information can be acquired from the individual's ID. A state driver's license will typically hold all of this information. Some of it that it will not would include the social security number, email address, and where the individual was born. Those are fields of information that we will need in the DACS system to be able to process that background screening. Let me emphasize the importance of the email address. This is how we communicate with the applicant if we need additional information to process their background screening or to provide them notices in regards to their background screening of either of actions that have been taken on them. So very important that you put that on there. Place of birth, phone number, and the current email address are normally not, and I will say not normally, they're not on the state driver's license there. So please make sure that you verify that and put that on there. We want to communicate just as clearly and as efficiently as possible with you and the applicants, and this is the way that we're able to do that. Okay, next slide. All right. So that is it for that section. I did have a question. If there are other adults in the home, BCIs that need to be completed, but they only have an ITIN, what can be done? You will need to reach out to me and my email address. If they don't have a social security number, I will be able to get that application started for you. And then I will reach back to you and let you know that the application's been started, and then you will be able to take it over from there. I don't think there's...
Okay, Jeff, I've got another one for you.
Okay.
What can we do to correct an email address if we've submitted the background check?
So as a DACS representative, if you have the admin rights, you should be able to go in and correct that email address. And the sooner the better, because I can tell you, I had an agency that verified the email address of somebody. And just as I was going through it, it was probably like 5-10 minutes later, the applicant indicated that they had a different email address. So you should be able to go in and do that. If for some reason you have issues with that, you can reach out to us at cbsunit@utah.gov and we'll help get that updated.
Great. So some additional questions here. If we have multiple locations, do we need to consolidate them to one location? How would we do that without submitting a new application? To do that, that is the form that we will be sending out after this training for you to supply that information to us so we can get your program set up and then make sure that you have all the appropriate new applications with your program. If we hire a fully remote position for an administrator administrator in a different state, how would you like us to do their background check since we can't do it face to face? Are we actually allowed to do that? You can do that virtually through a virtual meet. Is one option of doing that. And if you need to, you can reach out to DHS DACS at utah.gov for out-of-state printing instructions and prior approval. Okay. We are ready to go on. Jake,
Yep.
does this go back to you?
Mm-hmm. So after you submitted that application, I mean not application, but once you move off from entering those demographics in DAX, next step would be entering in the positions. Next slide. Now, what you should be seeing. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you should be seeing as soon as you click next is this pre-employment information page. Uh, with the current process, as I mentioned earlier, um, you know, the only thing that you will be changing in this page is just the position detail. So we move into configuring your program to only show specific drop downs. That way you don't get confused on which one to choose, but rather just choosing the position detail in that application. Currently, as I mentioned before, in DAX, when you submit an application, you are presented with multiple options with that drop down, and that gets confusing, especially when you're trying to run a different background check. And then, you know, once you completed the application process, the CBS team will get back to you saying that, hey, you chose the wrong drop down, and you have to start over. So this reduces that confusion on what to choose from the drop downs. But yeah, this will be included in that update that we are talking about. Next slide, please. Okay. Confirm applicant consent. So once you click next, you will be presented with this consent. Basically, just letting the applicant know that we have the information that we entered in DAX, and we're going to be completing a background check for them. What you need to do is to click on next. Next slide, please. And then next page will show you the research registries. You don't have to do anything off from this page. All you need to do is just click next. And then you will end up in under the payments page. Press next, please. So as you remember, as you recall, in the beginning of this training, that one of the other updates that we are going to be implementing in DAX is that you are not required to upload that identification document anymore. So as you can see from this application process, we kind of skip that part where you need to upload the document, enter the driver's license number and all that stuff. So that will be removed once we have the new update rolling beginning in July. So in this page, the payment page, you will be presented either to submit a payment by credit card or a batch payment. Credit card e-check, if you choose that option, it will immediately direct you to the pay.gov website where you can just go ahead and enter your credit card number and then start the payment process at that point. If you do check the batch payment part, basically what it means is that it puts that payment on hold. And this is very useful if you are planning on submitting like multiple applications that same day. And basically, what it does is that it puts the application into like a pool where you'll just need to submit that one payment for all of the applications that you entered for that same day, instead of entering your credit card information once, every time that you submit a new application. So you will be able to find your batch payment queue if you go under applications, pending payments, and then you'll see the list of the people that you submitted an application that is currently under the batch payment queue. Next. And yeah, as we talked about the batch payment earlier, you just click on pending payments, and then you'll see the people that you've submitted an application, but it's under the batch payment. So as you can see, we have 3 people that I put on batch payment instead of submitting the application one at a time. This one will just click on those boxes to pay now, and that will immediately calculate how much it will be, and then transfer you over to the pay.gov website to pay for those 3 people that you submitted an application with. Okay, next slide. Submitting the application. Next slide, please. Once you completed the payment process, you will end up under the data review. Best practice is to display the screen with the applicant so that they can review the information and catch any typing or spelling errors. Next slide. And this will be a more visual one in the next slide. So uh, as you can see, there will be 2 tabs. I think you click more than once. Oops. I think we're number 45, slide 45. Yep. Okay. So you'll see 2 tabs in there. Basically, the personal demographic information, your first name, last name, address, any aliases. If you see anything that's not correct, you do have that button in there that says edit, and then you can make that update. Whether it will be for the last name or like the date of birth or um, any other personal demographics that needs to be updated, and basically we'll just push you in through completing the steps again for entering a new application. If there is nothing else, just click on next, and then it will basically just have you review it again and make sure again that the information is accurate. Next slide, please. So once you have verified all the information off from that slide, everything is good. You click next. The next button in there is just submit. And when you do submit, you will be presented with this confirmation page with the applicant's name, application number, background check ID number, and we'll give you that information saying that you do have 14 days to get fingerprinted. And once you do click that submit button, it will automatically send an email to the applicant for them to complete the survey disclosure. And we'll talk about that the survey disclosure later on. Next slide, please. And this will be more question and answers. Um,
Okay, so Jake, just to be clear, we no longer will scan in the image of the license.
Scan the image of the
and
license.
and upload the ID.
Right, correct, yes.
Correct. That is a step we are eliminating. But you still need to be verifying that ID and that that person is who they say they are.
Correct.
There's some questions we're going to reach out and provide some technical assistance with.
So I do see a question here. DACS shows 7 pending payments for my program. Those are
Yeah.
for folks who are no longer employed. The pending payments have been there for 2005 days. Is there a way to clear that out? I believe that you'll need to make sure that you withdraw that person if you haven't. And there are steps later on the slide on how to withdraw a person off from your program, and that should also include removing them off from that payment page. But yeah, basically you just need to withdraw that person out. When an applicant is already in DAX, it automatically comes to the payment and wants you to submit a payment even if a payment is unnecessary. Is there any way to know if they still need to make a payment before it gets to the screen? Or do we just send an email to check if see if they are already in the system? So essentially, when you do submit an application and you see in there that they already have a profile in DAX, you will still need to submit a new application for them. However, when it gets to that payment page, you do have the option to click save and close, I think. And then when you get to click save and close, that's when you need to send an email to either DHS DAX or CBS unit to check and see if the fingerprints are still valid. If they are not valid, then you will need to submit that payment to move forward. If the fingerprints are still valid, then the team will be able to connect those prints, and then they can go ahead and move on with the application process.
And just something to add with this new process and how we're going to be setting up your programs, that will help with this, is that if we are able, this will help the system and us identify that those applications that are able to connect and move that determination over, that those are true and accurate. And so we shouldn't be getting as many having you stop and save at the payment page once we get this all implemented, as we will be able to be connecting those applications, and you should see more of that when applicable.
Do you see any more questions for me there? When entering payment and it has cleared, why does it completely kick us out and we have to start over and log back in? I haven't seen this one in a long time, but if if you are inactive in DAX for quite a while, it will definitely go ahead and kick you out for security purposes. Haven't seen anywhere anything where you submitted a payment and then it goes back to DAX and then kicks you out. If that keeps on happening, send us an email, DHS DAX, and then we'll go ahead and refer to our developers and see what they say. Okay. Anything else, Daphne?
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move over the time to Carrie or Shay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Now that you're nice and alert and everything, we're going to talk about something super exciting called the disclosure survey. So we've all been to the doctor's office or we've purchased a cell phone and we've been given this document that's like 700 pages long that they want us to read and sign, and nobody ever reads it. And we just sign it and move on because we just want to be done with that. That's what we see happen with the disclosure survey all of the time. And this is the one and actual case where it is very vital that the applicant read, read the disclosure surveys and agree to it. For many, many reasons. And we'll go through those. But the best practice is if you're sitting with them, entering the information, their demographics anyway, it's best to just complete that once that application has been submitted. Sit there and get the disclosure and get that from them right then, and then you're done with it. And then you don't get emails from us or asking you to send it to us and so on and so forth. And so the disclosure is really important because we're requesting fingerprints from a person in an effort to complete a background check. And the process of completing that background check, we look at all sorts of personal and private information to determine the eligibility of that individual. So first and foremost, the disclosure is giving us the right to request their fingerprints, review those fingerprints, and then maintain those fingerprints on our file or in our database. Basically, they get put on wrapback. We get notified every 24 hours of any sort of hit, and so we that's part of why that disclosure is important, is because it allows us to monitor those individuals to make sure that they don't go to, Las Vegas one weekend and have a party and get arrested. That way we can find out about it. Another reason that's very important for us too is it's an FBI requirement. We want to have that permission from the individual to complete the clearance and to gather all of that sensitive personal identifying information, but it's also a requirement from the FBI. And we do get audited on that, and they do ask us to provide specific disclosures of people. And so that's why if we seem to like browbeat you for them, that's why it's it's very important for many reasons. So after you've completed the application with the individual, they have 5 days to complete this step. But like we said, it's just best practices just to complete it and be done with it. After you've submitted that, they then have the 2 weeks to go and get fingerprinted. If they don't go and get fingerprinted, or after 5 days we don't get the disclosure, that application is going to close and you're going to have to submit a new application. Let's see. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Actually, let's go one more. Sorry. Oh. So some common issues that we have with the disclosure is it's just absolutely imperative that the information that you're entering or you're with the applicant of their identity is valid and correct, especially the email address. We notify people solely through their email address. And so if their email address is not correct, they're not going to get this, they're not going to get the disclosure email. Same with like misspelled names or date of birth. They're not going to get the email for the disclosure. Regarding cell phones, you can, it's kind of hit and miss when you use cell phones. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't as far as being able to access the disclosure statement. And so we kind of recommend just always trying to do it on on your PC. We do recognize that the email that is sent to applicants comes from a really wonky email address. It comes from a company called Innovative Architects, and that's actually our developer for DACS. You would think it would be simple to say, can we just have it come from CBS unit DACS, or disclosure? It actually takes a lot of development and a lot of time and a lot of money, and we just don't want to spend our resources. And so we know it's not optimal, but we're kind of stuck with that. And so if their applicants not getting the email, first and foremost, make sure you have their most current information and you can go in and edit it and change it. But also have them check their spam. A lot of times those emails go to spam. And so if check that and see if it's in there. Let's see. So if they didn't get the disclosure, say they've checked their spam, the email's right, for some reason they didn't get it, or maybe they did and they blew it off and now they can't find it or whatever, they can always go to the DACS website and scroll down and the link is there for the form for them to fill out. They will need to know their application number and their last name. So hopefully they have a 50% chance of getting things right, but you will need to provide their application number for them and their date of birth. And then they can just complete the form and then complete it from there. Let's see, any questions? I think there were some about the wonky email. And so I did go over that. Trust me, as soon as we're able to get it fixed, we would like to do that too, but it's not going to be something that's changed imminently. Were there any other questions?
I'll just say this one that came in. It's not really related to your fascinating disclosure topic, Carrie. But once an individual has an eligible determination, do we need to resubmit a new application periodically, or will their background check just automatically renew? If an employee is background checked and eligible, would we ever have to resubmit a background check every year? Say, no, that's the glory of this system. If they remain associated with your program, you enter in a background check one time, and then we will update it from our end saying that it has been renewed. And again, we are not going to be discussing or taking questions on our verification and renewal process, but that is something that is within the system. And again, something that we are updating so that it can be more clear of when a person is renewed and when we have done this work, but they need one application. And so if they started at your program 5 years ago, you just need to enter in that application one time for them.
Daphne, we did have someone say that usually when the applicant is face to face, they fill out the survey on their phone. And again, that's totally fine. You can do that. We just, if it doesn't work, then maybe try doing it on a PC. Sometimes it does work, and that's great. Yeah, so that's just, you know, some information for you.
Right.
Okay.
On to fingerprinting. Such more exciting things to talk about. All right, next slide. So the first thing we want to talk about is generating a fingerprint form. You'll notice there's an arrow pointing down to a fingerprint form. That will not show up for you to be able to print from here unless the disclosure form is done. So if the disclosure form hasn't been done, that won't even show up for you as an option. Next slide. So the fingerprint form, once you're able to click on that, it will pop open in a new window, and the fingerprint form is then created. Now, when you print this form or before you print it, now is a great time to check and make sure that everything is correct on the form. Make sure that the names are spelled correctly, that the social's in there correctly, because any of those bits of information that are incorrect will cause it to not speak to DACS later, and that will then cause them to be rejected. Something that's coming in the future on this form it will be the email will be listed on the form eventually. And again, that will be just to help us and to help you and your employee. So just be looking for that. And also remember that whatever they list as their name on here, Jeff spoke earlier about aliases and such. This needs to be their given name that's on their government issued ID. So if their name is Maria de los Angeles Ramirez, it needs to be listed as Maria de los Angeles Ramirez, not MA. Sometimes they list that. Sometimes they only put the last name. We have places that when fingerprints are done that they can put multiple aliases and names. And so always make sure that whatever is on this form matches their legal government ID. Next slide. All right, what to bring to a fingerprint appointment. So important, fingerprint form, that form that you just printed off and that we made sure everything was correct on. You need to make sure that they have the form. And again, like that the data has been reviewed for their accuracy. They need to have whatever payment is required for the live scan service, wherever they're going to get that. So whatever, when they set up for their fingerprints, whatever that location requires for payment, that's what they need to bring. And sometimes that's cash, sometimes it's cards, sometimes they have to pay ahead. And then of course, their valid government issued ID that again, Jeff went through. That's really important that they have a valid government issued ID, because if they don't, again, the fingerprints locations will turn them away. And the best practice is really to make a fingerprint appointment. But some of the live scan vendors sometimes don't require one. So again, you just want to check when they're setting that up, that that's a requirement or not, whether they need it before, because I can tell you that for us, it is required at the Mesa building where they come sometimes. And if they don't have an appointment, we will turn them away because we have the appointments are all full. So that's really important that they make sure and do that. Next slide. So on occasion that you have somebody who lives out of state, and this is kind of one of the questions, you have somebody who lives out of state and how do you get their fingerprints? Well, first of all, you need to get permission that we actually can do out of state prints or that we can accept them. So what would happen at that point is they would then get their prints done out of state. They would mail in their live scan form that they sign. That's really important. And then whatever their hard card of their prints. And then again, payment. And that payment can be either proof of payment, like if they paid through UCLAP, or they can attach a check or money order. And then the mailing address is right here, which of course will be included in our last slides as well. But remember that, again, you need prior approval before sending in any fingerprint cards from out of state. Next slide. Are there any questions? I think there's just the two. Oh, if we rehire an employee, so I know they already have fingerprints with you, how can we not make them read fingerprint? Our local sheriff department is giving me grief over doing fingerprints for us. Well, there's a couple things. Fingerprints are only held for 180 days. So if you have terminated them on your roster and it's been more than 180 days, we no longer have those fingerprints and they have to obtain them again. If we have the fingerprints, then we're able to still use them and they're still good. But if not, then we're not able to obtain new fingerprints, or they would have to get new fingerprints rather. Another question was, if fingerprints can't be obtained, is there another way to get them into the system? Example, I had a volunteer whose fingerprints were practically non-existent. She even went to the police station and they couldn't pull them either. So this happens often, actually. And I can tell you that what will happen is, so the first time they will go and they probably can't pull them, they'll get rejected. They'll ask them usually to go back and do them a second time, and they'll give them what's called a TCR number, and that's so that they don't have to pay again. They'll enter them and they'll try and do it again. If they don't go through that second time, they'll do what's called a name search on them, and we will be able to see that, and then they're able to clear them just through the name search. But they do have to actually try and do them with or without fingerprints, unfortunately. Does fingerprint have to be done yearly? No, you just need to complete your verification and renewal yearly. And this says, please refer to episode 4, verification and renewal, in the DACS homepage for a step-by-step guide. So again, fingerprints, we keep them unless they've been terminated. If they're terminated, then after 180 days, they are deleted. Is there any other questions?
Yes.
Oh,
How much do the live scan places charge about?
You know, it depends. Isn't ours 15? Is that
Ours
right?
is 15. Yeah. So it
At the
ranges.
Mesa, it's 15. So it's 15 to, I mean, I've seen 30.
And
Some
we've even
places.
seen up to $50.
Okay, yeah. I was like, it depends on where they're going, especially like sometimes if you get, I noticed if you're like somebody that's in a small town, they can do mobile, but that it tends to be, again, more expensive. So
Correct. Yes, there are mobile services out there that can come, that
let's
they come
see.
to you.
Yeah, and it looks like there's another one here. I have had a Hispanic client that needed a background check. I was told by the fingerprint place that they could not put two last names. His resident card had the last name as Hurtado Martinez. I ended up updating his profile with his driver's license, which had only Hurtado, and put Martinez as an alias. I changed this in the profile, but when they redid the fingerprints, it would not match in the application. I ended up doing a new application. Was there a way to do this without a whole new application? So I can tell you from fingerprint, first of all, they can add an alias. There is a way to do that on when doing fingerprints. There's actually a drop down box to add additional last names. So wherever they're getting their fingerprints from, they probably need to check with their fingerprint vendor to learn how to use that machine correctly. As far as the last name, like you should enter it as it is on the license in an application. And again, if it's not talking to DACS correctly, then that's when we need to reach back out again to that fingerprint location and have them adjust what's on that should be on the form correctly and entered correctly.
I'm going to
You just
chime
have
in
to
really quick
yeah,
on
please,
this.
Chris.
You can also pull up the individual from their personal and demographics page. There's, if you have admin rights, off to the bottom right, there's an edit button. And you can make changes if you've done typos or you want it to match the ID. Now, if the fingerprint's already sent, that becomes more complex. In general, you want to match the ID to what you put in DACS. That's all I got, Susan.
Thanks. Anything else?
No, I think we can just keep moving on.
All right, how to track the status in DACS. So how to track the status? So you've submitted the application, you've already been fingerprinted, it's been a couple of weeks, and you want to know where you are in the process. The best answer for this one is to log into DACS and check your at a glance section. This at a glance, as soon as you log in, it will just give you this cues where, if the application is currently in process, if it's been completed, or if there are any available and action that are needed from you that needs to be completed. Those cues has always been there, and I really encourage that you guys click on the cues to check and see if there's anything that's been needing any attention. But essentially those zeros, if they have something in there, if there's a one in there, you can click that number and it will take you to that specific application on what is needed from you, or if it what their current status is. So just make sure that you click everything off from your queue to check and see where they at. And if you have questions, you can always send us an email. We'll go ahead and take a look at that with you. Okay. And next slide. So I have a question come in. So there are different background check types for day treatment, residential support, and outpatient therapy, or do they use the same background check type? So when you do send me your license number, I can go ahead and check that with the provider portal system that we have to check and see if most of your programs or your locations have the same type of background check needed. And when I verify that one, I can go ahead and compile that into the update with where you'll only see just one or two entries in your DAX, but that is done on the back end. You don't have to do anything. But if you do see multiple entries in your DAX that after the update, it means that you will need to make sure that you enter persons on those locations if they are working on them. So if they're working on a, like say, for example, a congregate care program, you'll need to submit a new application for that one. If they're working as a foster parent, you'll need to submit a new application for that one. So that's when, if you see that location after the update and, it's a different background check, then you still need to submit a new application for that one. So another question, when verification is needed within 30 days, why will it not let you verify until the last day? So I've answered this one earlier, but basically with the verification, you'll actually need to verify it the day after so that it gets it or gets it cleared off from your queue. And the reason why it's been like that is because the system wants you to do it annually, like a specific exactly 1 year after you've submitted the renewal for that person. So yeah, you'll have to do it the day after it is due. So you'll see that when you click on your queue, employment verification past due, and then there should be a column there that says needed by date. So you'll have to do it the day after. Um, let's see. Is there a way to renew the applications without having to send an email to CBS unit since we click on employment verification already? So, do you want to answer this, Daphne?
I'm going to say our current process is to email the CBS unit, but also remember we are not going to be addressing verification and renewal questions currently, as that is not the purpose or topic that we are discussing today. And when we get further along in that process, we will come out with some better practices and our best practices when we are working on making some updates to the system at that time. One question that I've seen that has come in, if someone already has a background check with another company, can they use the same one? And no, there are different reasons people are fingerprinted, and those cannot transfer over, and that is per FBI. And so the Office of Background Processing is the ones that for this purpose, we will be meeting those federal and state requirements for what this background check looks like, and we are the ones that needs to perform this function and this service.
Okay. How do we check to see who is currently in the system and what is needed or missing? This is kind of I don't know how to address this question, but essentially, if that person is not in your roster, or you're trying to add that person into your program and they don't have that, you don't have them in DAX, you'll still need to submit a new application for them. And then as we mentioned earlier, if they already have a DAX profile, we can either connect or not connect their application depending on what is needed. But yeah, the main point is you'll still need to submit a new application for them. If a payment is not needed, then we'll let you know. You just need to send an email to CBS unit, and we'll go ahead and take a look at that.
Going to chime in really fast on this one too. As Jake mentioned, affiliates, and then roster will tell you who's there. You also have under reports in the header menu, you have fingerprint status report. We encourage you to just check the at a glance, which we will talk about at some point, and that will give you some status as to where things are too.
Right. Okay. Now I'm going to jump into why we deny. So when we make a determination, we're going to have two types of denials. The first is what we refer to as a shall deny. This is set statutorily for reasons we have to deny. So we will deny an app. We will make a not eligible status for an applicant if they have been convicted of a felony or misdemeanor within the last 3 years. It's the severe offenses. And we'll go over those in just a minute, in detail in just a minute. These shall denies, there is a small caveat. If they are applying for as like a peer support or mental health professional and adults only program, this does not apply. But these offenses really are what we call offenses against a person. These are offenses where there has been harm, whether it's physically, mentally, or financially, to someone else. These again, and it's a conviction of a misdemeanor a misdemeanor or felony within the last 3 years are these findings. So our other type of denial is what we refer to as a may deny. These ones I talked about earlier, we will be requesting additional information from the applicant to make a final determination. Things that we are requesting from them are to help us understand whether or not there's been sufficient repairment made or meant since these findings have occurred. So here, really, these are what we consider our criminal and non-criminal findings, so that we might deny for. These are things that are outside of the 3-year time period that we are statutorily required to deny for, that we will review those. Those are other offenses as well that have occurred in more recent time periods, such as like felonies within the last 10 years, misdemeanors within the last 3 years. Just those things that where it hasn't been isolated and they've been receiving multiple charges or convictions. Again, if they are, if the conviction is pending for those offenses that we have to deny for, if they are found on any of one of our non-criminal registries, which include juvenile offenses, listed as a perpetrator for either the Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services registries, if they're listed as a sex offender, if they have juvenile charges, and again, we go into some detail on juvenile offenses, that if they're under 28 or if they're older than 28 and have a repeated pattern, those are the types of things we are looking at as we make our determination. And again, we're looking at these to make a determination of what is the risk of harm, because this part is one of the reasons I really love my job. It's not only are we protecting individuals, but really, I know you know even better than we know that some of these individuals, that when they make a mistake, but they have been able to give back and provide, they're some of the best people to be in our programs. So we're looking at these not as a way to keep them out, but again, to say, is there a risk of harm? Has there been harm done? But also, has repairment been met? Have they been able to be accountable and grow from their life choices and able to help and provide back to others? So things that we are looking for, again, as we request information from them, we're requesting kind of their story from them to tell us, where are we at? Like, what is on your background and where are we at today? Have you been compliant with your court orders, or are you struggling to complete them? Because as we know from the airline industry, you have to put on your own oxygen mask before you can help others. Are you able to get your oxygen mask on so that you can help others, or are you struggling? That is what we are trying to look at and better understand. How long has it been? Has it just been a couple of weeks since you just got off probation, or since you just started probation? Do you need more time to show that repairment has been met? And just what other steps have they taken to correct or improve the situation? Okay. So those are things that we are assessing and looking at, and we are going through those. I also have to say that out of all of the applications that we receive, so like last year, the entire office processed 95,000 applications. We deny 2% of all applications that we receive. So our denial rate is not very high at all. And again, what we are trying to do is prevent the worst of the worst from entering. And again, these include these ones that we shall deny, that we are statutorily required to deny, as well as the ones that we have received information. And again, we are consistent at making these determinations to say, no, not at this time. These may deny ones really just mean not yet. I'm going to say most of our denials that we make, there are a few federal requirements that we have to uphold, but most of them, it really just means not yet. It's not a forever denial. But again, we are trying to assess and look at the length of time for us to be making these determinations. So, some questions. Let's say there is an employee who passes their background check upon hire, but then is later convicted of a DUI. Does this make them ineligible to work for us going forward? I'm going to just say that falls in our may deny. We're going to have to get more information. We're going to look at, okay, have they previously had DUIs or drug-related offenses? Is this isolated? Is this an isolated offense, or is this a one-time offense? Before we make our determination and base it upon all of that. And again, sometimes we just make a mistake. Do we see that accountability, or are they not taking accountable and just trying to get someone else to put on their own oxygen mask for them? Okay. How long after the sends in the required information will determine be made. We have a problem getting these pushed through. So like I said, we deny about 2% of all applications that we receive. We spend 80% of our time on the 2%. So what we are working on, and we're going to be getting into next, is an improvement and a way that we're hoping will improve our process so that we can really be focusing on the other 90% of the applications that we receive. And that when we focus on those 2%, it's at the time that we have all of the information gathered, and we can really make a determination. But usually, I'm going to say we go through and we look at these every couple of, once they provide us with information, we are reviewing these bi-monthly all at one time and going through and getting those updated. But depending on when they got that information in, they might have to be waiting a couple of weeks. But we are looking to improve this and make it so that we are looking at these in a different time frame and one that is more efficient and effective for our processes. So when someone has been denied under our shall denies, when does the first section apply, and when does 5A does not apply to an applicant who is seeking a position to as a peer support provider, mental health professional, if the applicant provides services in those programs. Again, we apply this. So if your program serves adults only, this is one of the biggest reasons we want to re-identify all programs, is to identify what background check application types we need to review. So we want to make sure we are applying this statute, all of our federal and statutory requirements correctly to your program. Because if you serve adults only, that's different than if you serve youth. And we want to make sure we are clearly identifying that and making sure we are meeting those requirements for your program, and making sure that we are identifying if you only serve adults only and it's in the substance use and mental health orders, then we are applying this and ensuring that we are not denying applicants, as we know that a lot of them, again, are going to have some history that may be disqualifying, and that way we can assess the impairment and where we are at in the process to see if they can still be associated with your program at this time. What is the process for people getting their backgrounds cleared, even if they have felonies or offenses on their background? We're going to go through that more in detail just coming up there. I have an employee that is still pending. Current wait reason states it's since January. Current wait reason states committee review is needed. There are times when this will take this long due to when we're trying to follow up with the applicant and get the additional documentation, depending on where the states are. Even though Utah is enrolled in national, RAT back, that doesn't mean all of the states are reporting the information that we need. They might say, okay, yes, they were convicted on this state, and that's the charge, and that's it. But again, we're trying to see about the different repairments needed. So we're going to be working with these employees to see, okay, provide us with additional documents and details. And they're going to reply to us, and sometimes we're saying, okay, we need more details. Can you if they can provide us with this. And so that's sometimes why this process takes a while. The process of pending charges, how is that handled when there are charges but no conviction? That is we have the authority to review those. This is, the legislatures have given us the authority to review this because sometimes the court process can take a while. And while, yes, individuals are innocent until proven guilty in the court of law, we also have the responsibility of protecting the vulnerable population. And we have the responsibility of kind of weighing those. But the legislatures, people have gone to their legislatures and said, okay, for these severe pending charges, we get to look at those and again make that determination. Our determination are not arbitrary or capricious. We look at these, and if they are severe, we will deny, even if charges are pending. And that is a couple reasons, is that if they are convicted, we have to statutorily deny them anyway. So we are applying that in order to be protecting the clients and the vulnerable population you serve. We don't look at applications as saying they are bad people, just that their choices are not the best choices to be working or serving these vulnerable populations. And so at this time, this is the decision we've made. Again, if we take a look at the circumstances and as we were looking for, and they provide us their story and saying, hey, yeah, this is the circumstances. This is what happened. This offense is little harm to anyone else. I've already met this repairment. This is what I've done. I'm starting to attend counseling or these treatment classes. I'm looking into this. This is already what I'm paying back, or this is the way that I'm making my repairment. That we'll look at those and we might come up with a different outcome. It just really depends on those circumstances there. A lot of these questions we are going to get to next, including talking about some of our determination statuses, what they mean, and I'm also going to say we're introducing some new ones today. Another question I'm going to get to is what to do when an out-of-state background check never responds. Example, for California, do you offer any links and any forms for the other state? Yes, we try to keep our website up to date with all of the information from the out-of-states on how to obtain those out-of-state child abuse and neglect records. With that information, there are times when another state will not respond or refuses to respond. So as long as you provide us with that documentation saying, lots of times these states will say we denied your request for this reason. And as long as that reason matches the reason for the background check purpose of getting those, we will be able to accept that. And that is the due diligence that has been. So for the sake of time, we're going to go on to the next and say how we make a determination.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. So we've had a lot of questions about what entails what we look at as far as our research in regards to the background screening process. Statute UCA 26B-2-120 lists what we have to look at in making a determination on a background screening. The databases that we research are the following: So the applicant background check system by the Bureau of Criminal Identification, BCI, this indicates all of the history within the state of Utah and nationwide. So we're able to see anything there, but a lot of times we won't have all the details on out-of-state check or out-of-state history, in which case we will have to make requests to the applicant to provide some additional information. If we're able to make a determination from the information that we have there, or at least we're confident that we have the information needed, we will move forward. But if we need additional information, because all states aren't the same as far as providing their information into the BCI database, we will request that additional information from the applicant. The Utah Courts Exchange System, this is state of Utah. Anything and everything that happened within the state of Utah, we're able to access that database and look at their history, whether they have convictions, pending offenses, it's all indicated there. Now, there are sometimes cases where a disposition has been made, but it's not recorded or we're unable to access it. On those very rare occurrences, we will request that information from the applicant to provide us with the final disposition, or at least documentation from the courts indicating what happened with that particular case. It could be that it was never prosecuted, it never went to court, but if we don't have a final disposition on that, we will request that information. The Sex and Kidnap Offender Notification Registration, also known as SONAR. This is a sex offender registry. We will look at in there to see if there's any findings or any registered offenders as required by statute. The next database we look at is with the Division of Child and Family Services, their SAFE databases. This is where it's recorded the Child Protective Services findings from DCFS. So in the SAFE databases, they will conduct investigations in regards to children, and they will make findings, supported findings, or they'll make determinations on those findings, whether they're supported investigations or whether they're not. Types of investigations that are supported, where they've gone and done a process of investigation, are several types of abuse: physical, emotional, sexual abuses. There's also failure to protect, other incidences where something has been harmful or deemed harmful to the child. So we look at those databases for those supported findings. The LEAPS database, this is Adult Protective Services managed by the Division of Adult and Aging Services. We look at here for Adult Protective Services investigations. Again, supported findings of abuse that can happen, such as physical, emotional, verbal, financial exploitation, other situations of harm to that individual in which they were not able to be protected or were exploited. So these are Adult Protective Services. So the two, SAFE conducts investigations on children or youth. LEAPS conducts investigations on adult protective services there. And then as required, we will go and look at the juvenile court records to see if it applies. In statute, it gives us the authority to look at those records to help and make a determination on that. Next slide, please. So if we find history for the applicant, now what? Okay, and I know Cammie's going to go over our determinations and things like that. But for you as providers, you need to log into DACS, view the roster of the applicant. If we, through the process of finding some information in regards to an individual, and we make a determination, they will receive notification by email, a specific notification regarding the history that was reviewed and the determination that was made. with the FBI and the standards and dictates that they give us, we're unable to provide that to agencies to be able to give you that information. That's just called dissemination, and we can't do that. We can only provide that information to the individual in which that research was conducted on that. So that is what we look at as far as the databases, and that's the history that we review. Next slide, please. Okay. Any questions on that? I'm not seeing anything specific to that. So I will pass it on to Cami.
Okay, so we're going to discuss the new determination meanings. There will now be 5 possible outcomes or 5 possible fitness determinations when we complete any new background check. So Daphne, do you want to go to the next slide? So what are the new fitness determinations and what are their meanings? So these new 5 outcomes, you'll either get a response back that the individual is eligible, that the individual is eligible conditional, that they are not eligible, or they are not eligible appeal in process, or they are in process with a wait reason. So I know there's been a lot of questions of why is it taking so long and what does it mean when it's going to committee review or where it's at in process. We will now be making these determinations up front. We will send the individuals a notification of what we need from them in response to one of these determinations. And you as the provider will get an email notification from the DACS system letting you know that a determination has been made. So this will bridge that gap in the delays of where's an application at and what is the determination. So how these are going to appear on your roster, next slide. You will now see these responses clearly on your roster, and we're going to go through each one of these. So our very first individual, and I'm just going to say these are all test names. These are not true people. These are just our fun made up names that we work with as we're testing. So our first 2 individuals, Daphne Blake and Melanie Felony, both of them are sitting with a determination of in process. So that's telling you that either we are waiting for additional information, we are waiting for their fingerprints. We are not able to complete their backgrounds at this time because we still need more information from these individuals. Now, our next individual, Betty Jensen, she's sitting at not eligible appeal in process. So we'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but this is telling you that this person has been deemed not eligible, but we need more information from them to make a final determination. Individuals with this status should be under direct supervision, much like when you see the status of supervision required. Now, the next individual, misdemeanor, is not eligible. This means whether he has one of those shall deny offenses or he's gone through the process and has been deemed not eligible. Maybe he was an appeal in process, but now has been deemed not eligible. At this point, misdemeanor is not able to work in a program. Now, Edna Mode is eligible Oscar conditional. So we're waiting for additional documentation on this individual, but we've cleared all other systems. And then Herman Munster here is eligible. So we've cleared all the background requirements. We've reviewed all systems and they are good to go ahead and work unsupervised. Next slide. So one of the things with these new rollouts is we are getting rid of, at the top of the screen where it used to have the big fitness determination of eligible, not eligible, in process. That is going away with these new systems and the new groupings that are being created. So now you will see in this yellow box, it has the determination status. And this is to avoid confusion on the different types of background checks or the different program clearances. So now you will be grouped in and see the determination that applies to your program and provider type. So in this case, as it shows in the box, this individual is cleared. They've completed all background check requirements and are good to work unsupervised. Next slide. This individual is eligible conditional out of state. So this individual is able to work without supervision while we wait for them to obtain the out-of-state child abuse registry results. Now, if we have not received this by the end of their renewal, so in that 1-year renewal, then they will be denied. Now, part of this new merging together system is this person then won't be able to jump from program to program and say, well, I didn't get it done in this year, I'm going to jump to another program and that year restarts. It now, because it's the same clearance type required, it will group them together. So if you were to go in and try and hire this individual and they didn't complete that out of state, it'll show them as denied because they did not complete that requirement. So it's an across the board status for that individual until they obtain that information. Next slide. Now, in process with await reason. These are a little bit different. So if the determination status shows in that yellow box is in process, you'll want to go down to that application and click submitted. This will help you understand why it is still in process. Next slide. And then once you click on that submitted, go over to the right where it says wait reason, and this has out-of-state child abuse registry. So this is different from the conditional Oscar. For the foster, adoption, and Title IV-E funded youth programs, this will remain as in process, and the applicant is not cleared to work until we receive those results and a determination can be made. So they will sit as in process, but are not able to work with those specific programs. Next slide. Now, not eligible appeal in process. So this is a new determination for you guys. And what this is we've reviewed their background and they have something on there that we need more information. So rather than flagging it for a wait reason like we always have in the past, we're going to automatically make that determination. So in this case, we'll make them as not eligible. We will flag them for appeal in process. We will still send the individual a letter documenting what is needed for this individual. The nice thing is now rather than it being on a wait reason or a pending status, this will now tell you that this person has been flagged and it's in process, and you'll be able to track these processes, and DACS will send you these notifications automatically. Now, the employees that have this flag of not eligible appeal in process, they have to be under direct supervision while flagged with the appeal in process status. And this status will remain until there's a final determination. So if they go through and do an appeal or reconsideration process, it'll still remain as appeal in process until that final decision is made of either they're not eligible or they are eligible. Next slide. And then lastly, we have our not eligible determination. And a fitness determination of not eligible means that applicant is either a shall deny or they've been denied through the reconsideration process and they are not able to work in that particular program. Next slide. And what are the questions?
If an applicant is eligible and then something happens and they are now not eligible, will we receive an email with notification?
So that'll still flag with that supervision required. That's where that's coming from, is a new determination has been flagged on that individual. And again, we will process that. And if it's something we need to take action in, then you will see that getting tagged again to the not eligible appeal in process or the not eligible. So DACS will constantly update those fitness determinations and send you a notification of what is of that new status. Let's see. If someone's background, I'm gonna save that for Shay. How long does it normally take from when the fingerprints are taken and DACS show that the fingerprints have been received? We currently have an application that shows fingerprints were now submitted. However, the live scan was completed on 5/28. That kind of varies. The the fingerprints, we get the notification in DACS anywhere from a few minutes to 24 hours it takes for that connection to be made. And then for us to receive the results, we are really at the mercy of BCI to get those results. It can take anywhere from 24 hours to even 2 to 3 weeks for them to get the results to us. So we can't process anything until we receive those results back from BCI.
If not eligible, can the applicant file an appeal?
Yes, they will be sent a notification, a letter with what is required of them to appeal the not eligible determination.
Okay. Well, keep going to our reconsideration process. We are just wrapping up really this, and then we will be presenting on this, and then we will be wrapping up the training.
Okay, if you go to the next slide, Daphne. So basically, every applicant has a right to appeal any of our decisions. Once we make a not eligible decision, they have 30 days from the time of that determination that it was changed from not eligible. The applicant, they have 30 days to submit any of that appeal documentation that we've asked for. If they fail to do that within the 30 days, then the application just automatically will close, and then that individual will have to wait 2 years before they can reapply with any type of program. Now, they can, if something happens within that 2 years, so say they don't follow through and we don't hear from them and the 30 days happens and the application closes, but then something happens, like maybe they were able to get their charges reduced, or something was expunged, and so, or they completed certain requirements. They can always contact our office, and if there's been a significant change in the status of that criminal history, or for the decision why they were made not eligible, we can take a second look at that time, but otherwise they have to wait the 2 years to reapply. And like I said, everybody has the right to appeal. However, depending on what it was that they were denied for, like Daphne went through, the shall denies and the may denies will depend on what type of appeal or reconsideration that they go through. If it was for any may deny, we cover those within our office through a multi-tiered approach and review the information that they provide to us. If they're a shall deny, they go straight to, it's called the Office of Administrative Hearings, and then those are reviewed to make sure that we have followed our correct processes and applied the statute accordingly. And that's basically it for reconsideration. So I'll turn the time over to Shay for separating applications.
Okay, so after all of this, we basically have 2 reasons that you may separate your applicant, whether that is you or they have chosen to no longer be associated, or there's a denial. With the 2 different types of applications, there are actually 2 kind of separate processes for separating. The first, you can either go into your roster or into the applicant profile and set them as separated with the separation date. Now, I want to note that this date should be the day that they are separated. Please do not postpone separation thinking, oh, they may come back. We do keep the fingerprints, as Susan said, for 180 days. So we do have access to those for 180 days, but we do not have the authority, and we should not be monitoring someone that is no longer associated with a licensed entity. So please do separate them the day that they leave your program. And please don't put a future date. Those get really confusing for us as well. Please do it with today's date. The second one, if you'll go to the next slide, Daphne, is if somebody is still in process, there is a second step, and this is missed quite often. So if they are still in process, we have not yet made a determination. You first separate, as we did on the last slide, and then go back in and click that application status. the submitted button, and then over on the right hand side, you'll hit withdraw. And then it will give you a withdrawal reason. Typically it's they're no longer associated with your program. That way it notifies our team, we no longer need to process this application. That way we no longer get angry emails saying you processed this after they were no longer working. Why did you do that? I'm sorry, we did not know they were no longer associated. So please make sure you do that second step as well. And I just want to touch on when you should separate. It had been asked earlier if you should separate while they're in the appeal process, whether that be through our office or through the Office of Administrative Hearings. Please do not separate them if you are still sponsoring them in that appeals process. We lose the authority or jurisdiction, if you will, to process that appeal if they are a private individual at that point and they're no longer sponsored by your program. And we cannot undo an accidental separation, even if you catch it 5 seconds after you separate. A new application will need to be entered so that they can become reassociated with your program. So please make sure you are separating people when you are supposed to, and you're for sure that you need to separate them before doing so. Was there anything I missed for the question? What happens if another company does not separate them in their system? We will deal with that internally and reach out to that other program and let them know that if they are no longer associated, they need to be withdrawing and separating the application.
If there are 2 applications on the roster, one showing eligible and the other closed because fingerprints were not taken, is there a way to delete the closed application?
Yes, you can separate that duplicate or closed application. Sometimes, particular in those situations, you also will need to withdraw because it is still showing as active. Similar to when Jake talked about those pending payments that have been sitting for a couple years. If you have not withdrawn, they'll just sit in your pending payment.
Hey. What happens if the other programs do not separate their employees?
I already answered that one.
Sorry, I thought you did and then it didn't go away.
Oh, okay, sorry. We will send them a nasty email for you. We got you.
I missed it, but did you say there are no future dates for separating?
Yes, please. For the love of all things holy, please do not enter a future separated date. It messes up our system. It messes us up. Please do not. Please enter the day that they're leaving.
We have duplicate employees that were initially paper applications. Should we separate those or will that cause problems?
I would say keep your most accurate fingerprint-based application. And you can tell that by looking in the applications tab and the status. If it says fingerprint-based, that application number is the one you would like to keep. Anything else, delete those duplicates. By separating them, they will no longer show on your roster. We have a PRN staff. At times they resign but have not worked for over 1 month. Do I use the last day worked or the day they notified us of the separation? I would say the day they notified you of the separation.
Okay. I think we will just wrap up today. We did have a section on DACS users that we will just be sending out. Again, we are training you so that then you have the ability to train any other individuals with your program that need to have DACS access, that will be available in this presentation, but due to time, we are not going to cover it today. As we just wrap up, I just want to kind of reiterate some of the most important items and takeaways today. So again, if a person is associated with your program, you need to start the background check process within 2 weeks of them becoming associated. Make sure that you log into DACS on a monthly basis. Accounts are automatically disabled after 30 days of inactivity. Again, that's to help us be protecting and ensuring that all users are actively using this system, and that we're not keeping people if they're not actively using this system. Fingerprints are once fingerprints are received, background checks are processed in the order that they are received, essentially like a first in, first out. That once we receive that fingerprint record, that's what goes in the top of our queue when we are processing that. We use DACS, the important messages and sign-on messages, for additional useful information for any updates we are making to the system. Just good reminders, things that will help both of us within this process, and additional training videos. We have the help file to review training and technical information. And again, we will be sending this training out as well as posting it in DACS and on our website as well. Again, these changes we are going to have be effective July 7th. Again, giving you some time to update to what these changes will be, and giving us a little bit more time to iron out some of the details of this as well. But again, with the provider entry, we're going to be modifying how your programs are entered into DACS. These are going to be per background check application type. So it might be a little bit different with license types, but when we say background check application type, we are looking at, are they serving youth? Are they serving adults? Are they serving a mix? What are we looking at? Are there certain federal requirements that we have to meet? Or are we only required to do state requirements? And so that form that we will be sending out is going to be really useful in helping us get these set up. And as soon as we get those forms out, we will be starting to do this. So you might see some of those changes with how your program is entered prior to July 7th, as we are getting that program information entered. But again, with that, we are going to be moving all of your roster information to these programs and types as well, so that we're not losing any of that information. For youth demographics, also included in this slide is some additional information on the youth demographics. We are eliminating those personal identifying information really that's used for fingerprint purposes. As still, you need to be verifying the youth, and also the name, their date of birth, and their social security number is required. But when this process, we are eliminating the identification document data entry for everyone. So uploading and entering the ID information is will no longer be required starting July 7th. We still may be requesting that information. Again, if we have a fingerprint error, or if there is a question on if you need us to fix a social security number that where the application got submitted without that being fixed. And lastly but not least is the determinations we talked about. We are no longer going to be viewing, or we are no longer going to be showing on the person summary that determination status, because as we've talked about, it cannot show just for your program because it's by person. And so if you have a different application type than a previous application, it's going it is not going to show per your program. And so we will be removing that. And again, having you check in the roster and on the application tab for the most accurate determinations. And we've also are updating those determinations within our process so that you can be receiving these notifications more effectively. This is our contact information. Again, if you have any questions about DACS, password resets, how the system itself functions, you can call the 385-239-5538 or email dhsdacs@utah.gov to get those questions answered. If you have any information about the background check process itself, do we have fingerprints on file? Is a payment needed? Where do the applicants submit their responses? These are all questions for the CBS unit, and this is monitored daily. I know we get questions all the time. Well, why can't I contact someone on Jeff's teams? They're the ones that processes my applications. I need to be able to contact just someone on Jeff's team. We do it in a group way in case someone on Jeff's team is out for the day or for the week, that there is still someone available that can answer your question and to get back with you on those. And so that is why we use a general phone number and a general email box so that your questions can be responded to there. Okay, thank you for joining us in this training today. Again, we are going to be following up with some technical assistance for some of these questions that we've received. We are going to be sending this information out to you, but we appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining our training.